I met Barney Burroughs at NAFA's technical seminar. You could say Barney is a legend in air filtration. He's an author, speaker, fellow, and former president of ASHRAE and 100-time attendee of ASHRAE conferences. He spoke at our technical seminar in 2019 in Irving, Texas, just before he took the stage to speak on the topic, how you can impact the world through filtration, a subject Barney has been passionate about for over 50 years. Enjoy our conversation.
This is H.E. Barney Burroughs. You'll probably wonder what the H.E. stands for because I get plagued with people who ask me what the H.E. stands for. It happens to be my legal name, which I don't go by because I dislike. When I traveled with ASHRAE, we were around the world twice. Spent a lot of time in the Pacific Rim. And I found out that virtually every public building, every bridge, every noteworthy monument was dedicated to H.E. somebody. So I finally figured out what H.E. stands for. It's His Excellency. So that's what H.E. stands for with Barney Burroughs, is His Excellency.
Are you the royalty behind any country, the kingdom of air filtration, maybe?
Well, it could be, I guess.
Sitting here with Barney Burroughs, H.E. Barney Burroughs, and this is Tony Verhoeven with the National Air Filtration Association. And we are here at the technical seminar in Irving, Texas. And Barney, you were nice enough to sit down with me for a few minutes tomorrow while you're speaking. Barney, obviously you've been in the industry a long time, and so I wanted to acknowledge that. I think that I heard that you just celebrated your 50th ASHRAE or AHR Expo in January. Is that correct?
Actually, it was my 100th.
Your 100th. Oh, right, because there's 2 a year. Yeah,
That's right. There's 2 a year, and I am a 50-year member of ASHRAE. But that was my 100th session. Now, that's not the only meetings that I go to. So there's a multiplier on that in terms of counting all of the meetings that are part of that repertoire of over 50 years of membership.
Excellent. Well, congratulations. That's
Thank
quite
you.
an accomplishment here. So let's talk a little bit about that. 50 years involved with ASHRAE. And maybe even a little longer than that in air filtration in general?
Actually, I was brought into the air filtration industry in the mid-'60s as an employee of the chemical division of Borg-Warner. I was involved in introducing a product that I even helped name with the corporation called Purafil. A year after that, I actually acquired Purafil and founded my own company around that technology. But in truth, I was a rep for about 3 years. So my first firm was a classic filter rep firm in which I repped Purafil along with high-end products of several brands, typical of most filter rep organizations. My first contact with ASHRAE was in 1966 because I was there looking for potential plastic components that could be manufactured out of high-impact plastic for my chemical division of Borg-Warner. So that introduction started me in visiting the expo. After several years of being a rep, I then went back and actually acquired the patent rights and manufacturing facility of Purafil and founded the company for which I basically was employed and managed for the next 20 years.
And so in that 20 years and really for the last 50 years, where was air filtration, I guess, technology in the industry, in the public mind, kind of back then? And how has that changed in that time?
Well, actually, Tony, I have seen the filtration industry grow old along with me. And I was invited to do a 100-year history of filtration for ASHRAE, which will be presented a year from now at their 125th anniversary in Orlando. What I found was that interestingly enough, that 100 years started with some very, very significant events. It was the Great War of 1917. 100 years ago, the trenches of France were the first usage of filtration products because it was the gas masks. It was the first use of weaponized chemicals. And so at the early exposure of filtration in what was called the belly box or the small box, which was the filtration unit that kept the soldiers alive, exposed to first chlorine and then phosgene in the First War. That history started using common materials, cotton wads, miniature carbon particles that have grown into a very sophisticated technology 100 years later. So it all started with in a sense, a big bang, a world war, and it started putting filtration into literally the survival business. And we've seen a number of occasions since then that filtration was involved in healthcare in a variety of ways. And even with the big bang that we experienced in 9/11, a major significant event in our own American history, but also in the history of filtration, because, again, it reemerged that filtration is, in a sense, the difference between life and death. And CBR exposure, for example, can be eradicated and eliminated with high-end filtration and gas phase control. So it's those kind of events that have, in a sense, influenced our industry. There are significant inventions and significant creations and inventions that have contributed to the process, and in a sense, I included those in the story of the filtration industry.
So you've written this paper, and it's in peer review right now. Not quite released, but at the ASHRAE.
That's correct.
Program team, or I'm not sure what the group is.
Program committee.
Program committee. Yep, right. And so they're looking at that right now.
Yes.
But you told me a little bit how it's not your typical technical paper.
Well, actually, it's a reflection, I think, of the filtration industry itself, because I portrayed the filtration industry as perhaps a bit player would be the best expression. And I cast the story of the development as a play. And so, in a sense, these major significant innovations, these significant influencing events are brought in as players on stage. But at all times, filters have, in a sense, been the third-tier actor, supporting large air handlers, supporting other systems, and, in a sense, mentioned in the small type credits. So I think some of the early history is very much reflected as a play with filtration being in a sense, behind the scenes, doing stage management and being supportive actors as opposed to the mainline actors. But I think what I basically learned and want to share with readers and members of the industry, that filtration, I now think, has come to center stage. And I believe some of the opportunities that we have because of the 100 years of history and development and innovation, that filtration is in literally a launching pad of new opportunity.
Right. So you talked a little bit about the history, and we'll be talking about the history once we read your paper. Tell us a little bit about what you'll be talking about tomorrow during your presentation.
Well, I am going to hit just a brief summary of highlights, some of which are national or international events, some of which are emerging technologies and industries that are related industries. And then what has happened as a result of developing our internal technologies, whether that be in the actual filter products themselves, or how they're tested, or how they're evaluated, or how they're regulated. And all of these components come together to, in a sense, bring us to a new level of maturity where we can take advantage of some of the opportunities that are ahead of us.
What are some of the things that you foresee kind of in trends in air filtration? What's going to happen in, you think, where are things moving toward in the next 5, 10, or maybe even 20 years?
Let me answer it this way. Let me look back and tell you that probably the most progress that we have made in the filtration industry has been within the last 20 years. So in a sense, we're gaining a momentum. Mm-hmm. Secondly, there has been for the first time a broader recognition of the role of filtration as it regards both the health and in some cases survivability of building occupants. And so the launching pad that I envision is typical of, we're sitting here at a conference of NAFA in which a paper was just presented about the effect of wildfires on the indoor environment, with filtration being the subject for alleviating the impact of the harm from wildfires, which is airborne particulate matter and gas phase components. And for the first time, we're hearing regulatory folks and researchers looking at filtration as being the key to improving the indoor environment from these external influences and sources. And this is simply an extension of what happened at 9/11. As a result of 9/11, virtually every international embassy of the United States has been hardened with ultra-high efficiency gas phase and particulate filtration. And the typical clean room technology that the NAFA members are familiar with has been applied to every embassy that is overseas that serves the United States. So these events have built a recognition of the importance of clean air to not only the productivity but also long-term survival of the human race. So in a sense, the industry has basically come to the point where it can influence the human destiny.
So when it comes to, I'm not even sure how to ask this, but when it comes to like air filtration and just kind of bouncing off what you're just talking about, who's really responsible for air filtration? Should it be government? Is it the average Joe like me? Homeowners and building owners? Is it nonprofits? Is it scientists like Dr. Chen? Is it all of us?
The simplistic answer is yes.
Yeah, exactly.
But that begs the question. And in truth, the first and more important stage that happened over the last 20 years was ASHRAE, the American Society of Heating and Air Conditioning Engineers, taking the position to support the development of much more sophisticated, much more credible, much more reproducible test methodology on filtration equipment. This has enabled filtration to, in a sense, come into the 21st century. The test methodology that was used in particulate filtration, for example, was developed in 1938 and had been used consistently until the last decade of the 20th century. That was the original NBS, National Bureau of Standards, smudge test, atmospheric dust spot test. It was a test that was applied when filtration was a housekeeping issue. And so it, in a sense, evaluated the ability of a filter to keep surfaces from smudging and reducing housekeeping costs. In 1991, the society established a committee to reevaluate and bring that technology of testing forward to the current need. I chaired that committee, and in 1999, Standard 52.2 was developed that modernized our ability to understand how filters work and how to evaluate their benefit. Beyond that, ASHRAE supported the development of 145, both .1 and .2 standards, which are the way of evaluating gas phase filtration material, both in a laboratory scale and in full field scale with filtration equipment, and these enabled the industry to build credibility and understanding on the part of the users on how to apply, how to select, how to service, and properly exploit the benefits of both particulate and gas phase filtration. So these have been giant strides in developing the credibility and importance of filtration. The fact that we're now talking about smoke, we're talking about respirable fines in terms of airborne products. We are in a sense paying attention to the fact that our built environments have the potential for both protecting but also putting occupants at risk. And so as a component of modern buildings, we need to realize that there is existing in the United States an inventory of over 4 million buildings, commercial buildings, that are probably under-treated in terms of filtration, meaning they are non-compliant to certain expectations of today's codes and building authorities and standards of care. So in terms of responding to these issues, it is a combined effort of regulatory, and yes, we have had regulations that have spawned and sponsored filtration, but they have been, over the years, insulated and isolated to certain issues. An example, in the mid-50s, 1950s, there was a regulation put out that, in a sense, overhauled and revolutionized the healthcare industry. Hospitals had to have at least an 85 or a 95% ASHRAE rated filter in their operating rooms, and that was the first time that had happened as a regulation. In more current regulations, as an example, in 1994, OSHA announced that an intent to regulate cigarette smoking in public buildings. Well, as a result of that, smoking literally disappeared almost overnight, even though the regulation was never published. It was never finalized as a regulation. But on a voluntary basis, building owners stopped smoking in public space, which in a sense recognizes the importance of contamination control in public buildings. And this, in a sense, has legitimized the need for extraction and filtration to be an important component of that. At the same time, ASHRAE has forwarded and advanced ventilation tactics. and ventilation is done with basically outdoor air. Well, outdoor air is contaminated. In a sense, it's bringing in respirable particles, odors from outside, and trying to use it as a dilution mechanism. Well, that process requires filtration. And so these concurrent trends are influencing the in a sense the legitimacy and the importance of filtration.
There's a lot we all have to learn here, so appreciate you sitting down with me and appreciate the very thorough answer. This is exactly kind of what I was hoping to get.
Okay, all right. Well,
very good stuff.
There's a lot more to the process. It's a very, very complicated issue because it combines so many of the elements having to come together at the same time.
Right.
You have to have an array of applicable products, which we now have because of the advancements that have happened in filtration technology. Until the mid 80s or early 90s, filtration was literally made of leftover products. It was fiberglass was invented in 1936, but it was made out of used beer bottles. It was recycled waste. Of the filter frames that we used was made out of recycled paper. The retention materials for throwaway filters and disposable filters was made out of the leftovers from bottle cap machines. The whole process of fibers. Early on, animal hair was used as the filter media. Hog hair, for example, was employed. And these products were used well up into the latter quarter of the century, until finally fibers were developed specifically for the filtration industry. And those kinds of things led to also fabrication techniques that were modern. Fram created in 1934 the oil filter for an automobile. That pleating technology was the granddad of now what we call a mini pleat that didn't come into the marketplace until the 90s. And so these techniques have finally come together. So it's the products, it's what they're made of, and it's a combination of the technology, the acceptance, the recognition of the need, and the legitimacy and importance of, in a sense, taking out of the air what you can't see, but which can harm you intensely in terms of health care and the life cycle. So it's just a combination of things that have come together, and we are, in a sense, in the heart of a perfect storm of opportunity for the filtration industry, in my opinion.
Well, Barney, I really appreciate your time and sitting down with me, and thanks so much for joining me, and have a great talk tomorrow.
Thank you.
For more information about how the National Air Filtration Association's membership, networking, education, and certifications can improve your career and business, visit nafahq.org.